I gave you an assignment last week to read the story of the prodigal son, and then I asked you to place yourself within the story of which character are you in the story. And I asked Rhonda, I says, well, honey, which character were you in the story? She says, well, I was never a rebel. My wife's a rule keeper. I mean, and you understand what I'm saying when I say she's a rule keeper. If there's a rule, she is going to keep it no matter what. And so she says, I'm a rule keeper. I said, so you don't think you're the older son? Well, no. Well, maybe I could be the older son in the story too. You see, we fit in there, and we may fit in both roles depending on where we are in our life. And we can be the younger son in the story of the prodigal himself, and which we all are, whether we want to admit it or not. At one time or another, we were the prodigal. But that prodigal can turn into the older brother and become a self-righteous, I kept all the rules, I deserve this type of person. So we have to be careful. All of us have to be careful. And so one of the assignments that I had in my second year of Bible college was to preach, and you get this, there's 18 of us in the preaching class, and we all had to preach on the prodigal. And the goal that the teacher wanted us to have was to make people feel like they were in the pig pen. And now it was not hard to tell which of the students had ever been around a farm and which of the students had never been around a farm. We would raise a pig every once in a while. Don Averill would call Mom up, and he would say to her, Betty, he says, I've got a runt. Would you like to try to save it? And so Mom would bring that pig in and put it by the oil heater that was in our living room in a box in there, and we would feed it with a baby bottle and try to save it, and then when it'd get big, we would proceed to eat it. But sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't. But I learned what it was like to be around pig slop, and that's not a very pleasant place to be. So what I want to do is I want to read this passage of Scripture in Luke the 15th chapter, and then I want to make a few comments, and then I want to be done. But it says this: there's the father and there's the two sons in this story. And he said, there was a man who had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need, so he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. But he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this is my son who is dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you, and I've never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. And when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. There's a couple of things in this story that just go outside of the norm. Unfortunately, in my family, the last couple years, we've faced the death of my mom and my dad, and we had an inheritance that was divided up amongst us. But it was after my parents had passed. This younger son is asking for something that really he has no business asking for. He is asking for his father to take what is going to be his and to give it to him now while his father is still alive. And the father does it. The father makes the division. And the younger son then takes all that was given to him, and he travels away, and he wastes his money. It's gone. He has spent it, and we find out in the last two verses that it sounds like he spent the money on, he gambled it away, wined it away, and spent it on women of the night away. That's what he did with it. And it was gone. And he, because of that, he turns to something that no Jewish man would want to do. He's feeding pigs. He's taking care of pigs. The Jews can't even eat pigs. It's against their religion to do that. They can't have, and I'm not sure, just how do you survive without bacon? I'm just, how do you do that? My wife could not go a week without bacon. I'm not sure she can go 2 days without bacon. In fact, when she came back, she went to a play down in San Jose, and her friend picked out a place to go have lunch when they got back. And guess what the name of it was in Portland? Sweet Bacon. That's where they went to. So the division comes, and the money's divided up. Everything is divided up, and the older brother stays at home. The younger brother goes away. That's the division. The younger brother comes to his senses and says, goodness gracious, life as a servant to my father is better than what I'm living now. My father takes better care of his servants than I am being taken care of here. In fact, I am so bad off that I would just as soon eat pig feed. Have you ever seen pig feed? You ever been around more than 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 pigs and put the food in the trough? And then pretty soon you have all 10 pigs eating out of the trough, and some of them got their feet that have been in the manure in the trough, and they're all eating that, and it stinks. And he says, I'd just as soon eat what the pigs are eating. That's how bad off he is. And so he goes home. He decides to go home. He decides to go back to his dad, and he decides that he's going to go to his dad and tell him what a fool he has been. And tell him that, look, I don't even deserve to be your son anymore. I will be one of your servants. And an amazing thing happens. An amazing thing happens here, because you get the sense in the story of the prodigal that dad spends most of his time on a daily basis on the front porch or just outside of the tent, looking for his son to come back on the road. And he's there. And I get the picture that this is probably midday, that this son is finally arriving home. And it says that the father runs to him. Again, another oddity. An older Jewish man would never run to his son. That's outside of the scope. That would not be a cultural thing for him to do. And yet it says that he runs to him, he hugs him, and he kisses him, and he begins to celebrate that the one son that had left and had gone away has come home. The one that he had thought he had lost forever has come home, and he's back home where he belongs. I don't know if you've ever, you who have been parents or you that have had kids, there's something about it when the kids come home after they've been gone the first time. There's a hole that gets filled back up. And especially if they have left under not the best circumstances. And I speak from experience. My oldest daughter left our house telling me what a complete ass I was. And there was something that happens to the father when that kid comes home. And they honestly tell you that they're sorry for what they've done. And that's what's happening to this dad. But the son's not even getting a chance. The son's not even getting a chance to tell dad how he feels and what he thinks. When he comes back, the father reaches out and takes him in with no explanation needed. And Jesus finishes the story. The story of the prodigal, he finishes it talking about the older brother. You know, the older brother who's always dressed the way he's supposed to be. The older brother that when dad says, go take care of the sheep, he goes out and takes care of the sheep. The older brother when dad says, it's time for us to plant the wheat, he goes out and plants the wheat. The older brother who does everything that dad is asking him to do, that is always there, takes care of everything. And he comes, and here's the amazing thing that I find, he won't even come into the house. He doesn't even come into the house. He hears the party going on, and instead of coming in and investigating for himself, he asks one of the servants, hey, tell me, what's going on in there? Why is there the dancing? Why is there the celebration? What is it that has caused this to take place in my father's house? And he is told, well, your younger brother's come home, and your dad's throwing a party. And the older brother throws a temper tantrum. The older brother immediately comes to 3-year-old in Walmart on the floor crying because mom won't get him a ball and stomping his feet. And that is what the older brother is doing. He's throwing a temper tantrum because he thinks, I have never had this done for me, and I've always kept all the rules. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Why is he being treated in such a way? And he whines to his dad, and his dad tells him why. His dad tells him very clearly why. He says, because this one, I have always had you with me, but this one was gone. This one was lost. This one, I didn't even know if they were dead or not. And this one has come back to me. And I'm going to celebrate that. And the explanation of this story is really quite simple. It really is quite a simple explanation. Jesus gives it later on in the chapter. And he gives the explanation of it. You see, Jesus was dealing with these hardliners within what the Jewish religion, who had put all these other rules and things within the things that God had asked them to follow. And they had heaped these things upon other people, even though they didn't keep them themselves. And he is dealing with these law keepers, these self-righteous, arrogant people that they had become. And so he explains to his disciples who the parties are. You see, one of the things that the Jewish people never understood, one of the things that we who grew up in the church struggle with, even in Judaism, it was for everybody. God was for everybody. He wasn't just for the Jewish people. He was for everybody who would come to him. He was for everybody who would follow after him. He was for everybody who wanted to accept him for who he was and what he did for them. We struggle a little bit with that in the church. We struggle because if somebody looks a little different or acts a little different or is a little bit different from us, we struggle because it doesn't fit the mold of what we think how a Christian should act. One of the best things that happened in my life was when I decided that it was time for me to go on a mission trip, and I went somewhere where I was the oddity. I went to Liberia, and we went out in the back country a little bit, and I scared little kids. And I love little kids. You guys know I love little kids. I scared them. They went running to mama, saying white man in their language, and running to mama and hiding because there was something odd, there was something different, something that they were not used to and accustomed to. And we struggle with the same thing in the church when someone comes in who looks a little different, maybe acts a little different than we do. And we forget the father in the story of the prodigal. That when that lost one, that one who comes to him, that he is welcomed and a party is thrown for him because dad wants him home. See, God wants us all at home. And so the explanation is, look, these are my kids. And I don't want them to be lost. I want them to be with me. You see, it doesn't make any difference how good of a rule keeper you are. You're going to fail. And if you don't think so, most of you have probably failed in keeping the rules already, and it's not even 11 o'clock today. Because if you're like me, you drove here. And when you came into town, were you going 25 miles an hour? I wasn't. When you hit the corner coming from Grand Round, you hit the corner coming in, were you at 35? Or were you still at 45, Ed? I know what speed I was at. You see, we cannot keep the rules. And because we cannot keep the rules, we need somebody who will make us look right. There's a song out that is sung by the Neelands. It's a Southern gospel group, so most of you probably don't know who I'm talking about, but it's sung by the Neelands. And it's called, and there's a line in the song that says, "I'm glad that grace is not fair." I'm glad that grace is not fair. Because if grace was fair, we would all be in a world of hurt, and it wouldn't be grace. We as Christ's followers, we who strive to follow after him, need to work at being more like him in the way that we treat people, in the way that we accept people, in the way that we love people. And I'm not saying that we need to accept that which is wrong. I'm not saying that we can't speak as Jesus did when things were wrong and he told people they were wrong. I'm not saying that. But we need to remember, each one of us, that at one time or another we were the prodigal. We were the prodigal. And we may still be the prodigal. I don't know where all of you are at in your relationship with God. So we may still have some prodigals here this morning. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Because that would mean that the prodigal is trying to find his way back to his dad. And we who have found that joy and that love and that grace and that mercy in our lives need to be willing to bestow it upon them also. I can be very judgmental. I'm just honest with you. I can be very judgmental. When I drive by places where the homeless people have pitched their tents and thrown their garbage and stuff, and I'm going, why in the world? And why do they let them do that? You know, I'm just why is that going on? I'm judgmental. I know that. I understand that. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, I'm just being honest with you. And I'm so glad that God is not that way with me. I'm so glad God is not that way with me, because I can see God at times probably going, why? Ray, why? Why are you doing, why did you say, why? That's right. I don't always know. You're absolutely, I don't know why sometimes. But I do know this. I know that grace isn't fair. And God has bestowed his grace upon me through his Son, Jesus Christ. I firmly believe that I've been both sons. I've been the prodigal, and I've been the one who wanted to throw rocks at the prodigal when he came home. I've been on both sides of that.
In the morning when I rise, in